Hello guys, this is Gopi back with another video in the React.js series. In this video, we are going to discuss about how to create React app in our local machine, and we will try to understand the project structure. If you are landing in this video for the first time, I am Gopi. I'm a software engineer having over a decade of experience in the web application and mobile application development, and I'm the author throughout this course. This course is planned to teach React.js for the beginner from the absolute scratch. If you like the series, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you will get notification for all the videos that we are uploading. So let's get started into the video. So here I am on the terminal. So I'm going to create one React project using npm create react app. Let's create a project. I'm just going to type npx create react app, and I can give any name. Since this is going to be the first name, I can give app or my first app, something like that. That's up to you. So my first app. Okay, this is nothing but the project name. My first app is nothing but the project name. Create react app is the package. Using that package, I am creating React project. In the last video, I would have explained you what is npm. Now I am explaining what is npx. Npm command helps you to install the package and then you have to use it. I don't want to install create react app project or package in my local machine. Instead, I wanted to download the latest version of create react app, and then I need to create the project, and then that's it. I don't want to use a create react app after that. That is the reason I'm using npx. So npx stands for node package executor. It will not download install. Instead, it will download and execute and then delete the package. That's how it works. So this is done. So let me hit on enter. So it will create the project. Okay, you can see that it started. So let's wait for some time till it gets completed. Then we'll proceed further from Visual Studio Code. Okay, so now you can see that the project creation is completed and I didn't get any error. So let me get into the my first project directory, and then I'll be just starting that project from Visual Studio Code. So let it open, then we'll proceed further. So here you can see the project is created. Yes, of course I trust the project, so let me trust it. Okay, so here you can see the project is created, and these are all the default directory that we are having for any React based project. First and foremost, here you can see there is a readme file. We are not getting to this. This is just the file because at the time when you create React project, so it by default comes with readme.md file. Since this course doesn't have anything related to Git, I'm not explaining that, so you can just consider that that's a version control tool. We will be starting with package.json file. So if you open the package.json file, you can see the file contain actually a lot of details. Of course, we don't need a lot of it. We can just we don't need all those things. Okay, we only focusing on these things. First and foremost, name. What is this name? The name is nothing but the project name. If you wanted to change, of course you can change it. This is the version of the project, and here it is a private. So private means that the package is not meant to be published to the npm registry, so we're just maintaining it as private. And then the dependency. When it comes to dependency, two types of dependencies are there. One is dev dependencies and then dependencies. If you look at it here, it just mentioned as dependencies. So these are all the must have dependencies. Okay, and there is a dev dependency. Those are all the packages or dependencies that helps for the development purpose. That's what the dev dependencies is. These are all the inbuilt one. If you look at it here, first 4 different packages are related to testing library. Okay, all those are related to library. Since we are executing file related stuff, this is already been added. This is the React core package. The current version of React that we are using is 19.1.0. React DOM is nothing but the package that actually takes care of DOM related functionality. This is for core functionality, React core functionality. This is for DOM related functionality, and this one is for creating the scripts. Where are we going to create the scripts? So the scripts are nothing but start, build, test, eject, all those things are nothing but the scripts. So all those scripts will be coming from React script. And this is all about vitals, analytics and those things. We don't need this and we will be removing them. Okay. These are all the packages. And then we are having a script. So we know that how to execute JavaScript file, but we don't know how to execute a project that is coming from package.json. For that, we need scripts. If you look at it here, I have start, build, test and eject. Start means that when I execute start command, internally this will execute this command. React script is the package that we installed. So this package, with the help of React script package, it starts the project. This is the command. And then I'm having a build. If you wanted to do the build, production build or something, you can use so. And then we are having test. If you wanted to execute the test, of course we don't have any tests here. If you wanted to execute a test, you can use this command. This is for eject. As of now, this project is created and maintained by Create React App. If you don't want that to be maintained, if you are going to maintain everything, then you just eject it. Okay, then you have to manually take care of everything. That's all about the scripts. These are all the required stuff. That's all the things. If we get into the company side, of course, this scripts commands get customized because there will be having some kind of configuration that's supposed to be there. So all those things will be added in the command itself. Okay, that is the reason we are having the scripts. I hope this package.json is clear to everyone. If you are not understanding it clearly, just put it in the comment box. I will try to reply it as soon as possible. If couldn't, then I will re-record this specific part alone and then publish it as a new video. This is fine, right? Package.json, which is nothing but the entry point, the starting point. And then we are having package lock.json. What is the difference? Package.json contains the dependencies. Package lock.json file contains the dependencies of dependencies along with its respective versions. So if I get into package lock.json, of course you will be seeing the same kind of details, and these are all the dependencies which we have already discussed with the package.json. But if I come down, you will be see that Node.js, Adobe CSS tools, Node modules, alloc, quick LRU, and these are all the packages. Of course, we know that we haven't installed any of these packages, but these packages might be internal dependency for other packages. Example, I'm having React, so this CSS tools might be the internal dependency for React. If this CSS tool package has any dependencies, then that will be again referred as like this one. So remapping is the package. This package contains dependency with gen mapping and then the trace mapping. This is how this package.json, package lock.json, that maintains the details. Okay. Next, git ignore. As I said, the project by default initialized with git as the source control tool. That by default comes with ignore file, git ignore. If you don't want any file that get added to the git, that will be added here. Once a file or pack directory is added, that will not be maintained. And I'm having other three directory: node modules, public and source. We will be discussing about source a little later. First, try to understand node modules. Node modules is the directory that actually act as a installation folder. Example, in the package.json we have lot of dependencies. Package file have lot of dependencies. Where you are going to install those dependencies, that's where the node modules is. So node modules is the installation folder. If you get into it, there are a lot of directories. All those are nothing but the packages. And then I'm having a public. This is going to be the favicon that actually present in the tab, browsers tab. Index.html, in the sense this is going to be the only one HTML file in the project. In the introduction video, I would have told you that React is a single page application, which means that the entire application will be having only one HTML file, and that's this HTML file. You will not able to see any other HTML file anywhere in this project. Okay, so all the component, all the pages, whatever that we are going to create, everything will be, rendered in this place. That's what the single page application is. Next, these are all logos. Of course, these are all various sizes of logos of React. And this manifest JSON file actually contains the configuration for which favicon, what is the sizes and what is its type. And this is for the configuration for mobile app, all those related stuff will be here. And this is for robots.txt. Of course, we don't need this as of now for server-side configuration, those things. That's all about the public. And now it is very important to get into source. We have already discussed a lot in the specific video. In the next video, we will be discussing about what is actually present in the source directory and what is the purpose of all those files. Okay, stay tuned for another video. Till then, bye. Take care. Welcome back to another video in the React.js beginner tutorial series. In this video, we are going to continue where we left in the last video. If you look at the last video, we were created project, we were going through the project structure, what was there, what were the files available and everything, but we just left with a source directory alone that we are going to continue in the specific video. So let's get jumped directly into the video. So if you look at this directory, source, it is where all the components and its respective files would be present. There are many different files available. Let's start with setup test.js file. This file specific for setting up a test that you will be writing, but we are not going to write any test, so I can just avoid it. And this report web vital.js file is all about collecting the metrics of your application that will help you to maintain or analytics for your performance of the applications. And then we are having logo.svg file. This is the logo that will come up once you start the application. I will be explaining you how you can start the application and those things. Index.js file is nothing but the entry point for the React.js application. So if you look at this, here we are having a React DOM.create node. Of course, we haven't discussed anything about virtual node component or anything. As of now, what you can do is just think that there is a React DOM package. If you can see here, as I explained, so React DOM is the package that was already installed. So from this package, they have access to this React DOM. Okay, this React DOM has a method called create root, which means it will create one root element. This is nothing but document.getElementById. Whenever in JavaScript, somewhere if you see document, which means it always points to the HTML document. Where we will have HTML document in the React application, we will be having only one HTML file that in the public directory. So let's open the index.html file. You can see in this index.html file, I have only one div, and that div element with id attribute value as root. Let me get back to the index.js file, and you can see from the document, from the HTML document, I am trying to query an HTML element which has id attribute value as root. Of course, we know that in the HTML file, I have a div element and that element id is root. So this is going to be the element that I'm querying from index.js file. So once I queried that, I will be getting the div element. So I'm passing that div element to this create root method that will eventually consider that as a root element, and underneath that root element, all the components, whatever that we are writing, everything that actually goes inside that browser DOM node. Okay, and that's what stored in the root variable. So within this root variable, I have access to the render method where I am trying to render the website content. Okay, what am I rendering? I'm rendering react.strict mode and then app. What does this app is? What does this strict mode is? We will be discussing them. First, let's start with React strict mode. So what does it? So this strict mode actually helps you to, with more details whenever you are working within the development mode. Okay, this strict mode will not work in production, but it will work in the development mode. That helps you a lot in the development perspective. So this will give you a lot of details, like if you are using some of deprecated API, or if you are using some of lifecycle method that is unsafe. Let's say example, we are having a function component. Previously we were using class component. If you are using any class component method, then obviously you will be getting some problem. So those things will be maintained by this strict mode. Keep in mind, strict mode is only for development, not for the production. If you are not aware of what is function component, what is class component, don't worry, we will be discussing them in the next video onwards. As of now, that's what strict mode is. Strict mode is only for development purpose. That will give you warnings for all the unsafe lifecycle methods or any kind of deprecated API and those things. Okay, and then I'm having app. What is this app? This app is actually coming from here. Where it is from? It is from current directory app file. So here you can see there is a file called app.js that has some code. That code will get rendered here. Okay, don't get confused. I just reiterate everything one more time. I have a development in the HTML document. I just query the development. I consider that as a root element for the DOM, React DOM, and within that root element, I am going to render my React application source code. In this render method, you can see I passed this specific lines. So one is open tag of react.strict mode. Strict mode works only in the development, not to the production environment. In the development, this strict mode gives you more details whenever you are using any such kind of unsafe methods or deprecated API, those things. Okay, that will help us in a lot of ways. That's why it is working only in the development mode. It will not work at all in the production mode. And then I am having an app. What is this app? Let's jump into app.js file. So if you look at it here, this is the content of a specific file called app.js. In the introduction video itself, I would have explained you that React is a component based architecture. This app.js file is actually a component. I am using this component in index.js file. Okay, that's what it is. Now there will be a question. What is component? Of course, we haven't discussed that. In the next video, we will be discussing them. No questions, no worries. Just follow my instructions. You will be able to follow up. Okay. So as of now, this app is nothing but a component. This component is actually coming from app.js file. How does one file function is accessible to the another file? Because I'm exporting it. Just export. That's it. Okay. Just we are exporting so that someone can import and they can make use of it. And that's what actually happening it here. Right. So the next thing is, this is just the HTML code, just plain HTML code. Okay. Next, we will be discussing about component. At the time, you will understand the structure and everything. But as of now, these are all the default file. Apart from this app.js, I have app.css file. Here, you will be having all the CSS related files, styles related files for the app.js component. And then I'm having app.test.js. Of course, this is a test file. We are not going to do anything. Then I'm having index.css. Just again another CSS file that targets index.js file. That's it. Now that's all about the files and folder structures of inbuilt React. We are going to start the application. How will I able to start? Let's jump to the package.json file. Here is where we will be having all the details. So first, we don't need dependencies. We have already installed the dependency. We will work with the script. By default, it comes with this 4. If you wanted to change this start to anything else, your name or whatever that is, of course you can do so. Okay. I'm not going to do. What am I going to do is I'm going to give npm start. This start is exactly the same as this one. So when I do npm start, it will internally execute React script start, so that application start running on. If you wanted to change anything, let's say example start to something else, let's say example started to Gopi. In that case, you should not use start directly. Instead, npm run Gopi. Likewise, you have to give, because that start is the inbuilt command. Okay, it's an inbuilt command, so it works without a run. But Gopi is not an inbuilt command, that's a customized one. So we are explicitly informing React or Node to run this specific script from the package.json file. That's what it is. Start is the inbuilt alias name. That's why it by default works with npm start. Let me change this to start back, and we don't need this as well. So npm start. Let me hit enter. You can see React script start. Okay, this is same as this command. So that's what internally actually running. Okay, now you can see the project is up, and this is the default template that comes with create React app project. What I do is I will just go ahead and change the code and see what are all the changes that you will see here. Let me close. We don't need this terminal, and you don't have to stop this. That will eventually restart for after every save you are doing. Let me close this. I will be just doing the code cleanup. Whatever that I don't need, I will just delete it. First, I don't need any test file, so let me delete. We don't need this vital file as well. Let's delete. We don't need this logo svg file. Let's delete. Index.cs file, I will just clear up everything. App.test file, I don't want anything. App.js file, let it be. We will be first clearing up the CSS file, and I will just remove everything within this div. I will just put welcome to React training from absolute scratch. And we don't have any inbuilt class called app. I can even remove this. Just to the empty div is enough as of now. I have deleted all those files, right? If I have any such references in this, I can even delete that. You can see there is an import. I said this app component is exported. If someone export, someone will import, right? That's what it is. So logo file was within this src directory. I have deleted that. So you wanted to import that source file into app file. So I don't have. When I was having, I was imported. Now I don't have that. Let me delete it. That's it. Okay. And app.cs file, that's it. That's all. Nothing wrong. And see if it has any error in it. You can see here I don't have a report vital. I have to delete that. That's it. And then getting back to, I don't need this logo file. I don't need this logo file. Of course, let it be the favicon. And in this index.html file, I don't need any of this. Nowadays, every browser supports JavaScript, so I don't want it to keep this no script at all. Let's delete that. That's it. And you can even delete whichever that is not required. I'm not going to do any other changes. React tutorial by Credo Systemz. Okay, and that's it. That's all about the HTML file. I have cleaned up whatever that I don't need. Everything I have done so. Okay, that's all. This is how your project should be. If I go back to the browser screen, you can see whichever that I have wrote in the app.js component file, that only rendered here. Why? Because that's how the project is. Okay, in the syntax.js file, I asked it to render app component. So if I get into app component, you can see it returns only welcome to React training from absolute scratch. That's it, and that's what application is all about. Now we have cleaned up the project however the way that we wanted. In the next video we will be start understanding what is component, what is function component, and what was class component, what is the different, when to use which component and those things, so that you will be having some basic understanding. Then we will be jump on to creating our own component and those things. We will be just starting with the little things so that you'll be having very good understanding. If you have any questions, need any clarification on any of those things, please put it in the chat box. I'll be just referring them and then reply. Welcome back to another video in the React.js beginner tutorial series. In this video, we are going to continue where we left in the last video. If you look at the last
introducing about the course, let me introduce myself. I have around a decade of experience in developing various mobile applications and then web applications. I have vast amount of experiences in React.js application development, and I'm here to share those experiences with you all. If you are not aware of what React is, if you are not at all started with React, and this is going to be the complete beginner course, because here we are starting from the absolute scratch. We start with what is React.js, how are we going to set up the local development environment, what are all the topics that we need, everything we will be covering from the absolute scratch. What is states? Of course, we do have a separate dedicated video for every topic, theoretical as well as the practical one. States will be having a video which explain what the state is, how are we going to implement that as a separate video. And we do have another video where we will be discussing about direct practical implementation of states in our application. Likewise, we will be discussing about props, we'll be discussing about hook methods, virtual DOM, server-side rendering, and whatnot. Whatever that is available in React, I'm going to cover that everything within this specific video course. Without any delay, let's get started with the introduction of React.js. In the next video,
we are going to discuss about introduction about React.js. So first and foremost, what is the primary agenda that we are going to discuss in this tutorial? First, we'll be starting with what is React, and then why we need to learn React, and then we will be discussing about what are all the features that is available in React, then the training curriculum, and then training process. And of course, when I discuss about the training curriculum, I will be covering training process as well. So in this video, we are going to discuss all those things. So without any further ado, let's start with what is React. So React is nothing but open source JavaScript library used for building user interfaces specifically for single page web applications. And of course, React is a library was developed and maintained by Facebook. If you are not aware of what is a single page application, don't worry, we will be discussing that. React allows developer to create large application that changes the data dynamically without reloading the page. And of course, there might be a chance that you get confused about reloading the page, processing the dynamic data. Don't worry, don't get confused. We will be discussing about how the data changes dynamically without reloading the page. And at the time, you will be having a very clear understanding of how React works behind the screen. Yes, of course, React is faster comparatively other frameworks in the industry. It supports JSX syntax and TypeScript. And JSX is nothing but it's JavaScript XML. JSX syntax let you write HTML syntax in the JavaScript itself. TypeScript is a language that's a kind of advanced JavaScript with tightly coupled with the data type. So these are all about React. So next we will be discussing about, of course, we know what is React. We need to know why we are learning it, why we spend our time understanding React. Of course, we do have some kind of the things, right? That's what we are going to discuss. First is high demand in the market, and of course React developers are very high demand in the market, and we can develop components that could be reusable, big community support, whatever the requirement you are about to achieve with React, and that can be easily achievable with the help of big community support. Yeah, we will be having almost every package is available because of that awesome community. React plays top in the industry market. And then learn and use everywhere. Once you started understanding React web library, you will be able to develop mobile application with the React Native. If you wanted to develop a Windows based application, that can also be done with the help of Electron. So once you understood how the React works, you can develop whatever the type of application you want. Web application, mobile application, Windows application. Yes, of course, that's what the liberty given by the React, and that's why it is still high demand in the market. And of course, big performance issue. Yeah, as I said, it's one of the fastest library in the market out there. Then we will be jump and understand the futures of React. First future is virtual DOM. You might have heard a concept called DOM, but this is virtual DOM. We were discussed about the performance, right? That performance is actually achieved with the help of virtual DOM only. Supports JSX and TypeScript. That we know, we already discussed. And then states and props. We will be discussing whatever the features that we are discussing here, like states, props, unidirectional data flow, hook methods, server-side rendering, routing. Every concepts I will be teaching with a video that specifically discuss about the theoretical concept of what it is, and then another video that practically discuss about what actually the concept is. That's how we have planned this course. Cross-platform supports, of course, we discussed it, right? Once we started understanding the React, you can able to develop mobile application, Windows-based application, web application. That's what the cross-platform is all about. In this video, we are going to discuss about how to set up a local development environment. So let's get started and see the tools that is required. So first and foremost, I'm in the official documentation of React, which is react.dev website. And in this page, if you look at it right, you will be able to see I'm on the installation page. As per this page, right, there are various ways to create a React application. Like they recommend us to use Next.js, Gatsby, but still I would highly recommend you guys to start with the create a React app, since that is going to be the basics. So you will be having some understanding of how the structure would be, what the purpose of each structure, everything is going to be, and that's why I'm going to start with create a React app. So to make use of create React app package, we need Node.js. So Node.js is nothing but JavaScript runtime that let you run JavaScript without having browser dependency. So in this page, you can go ahead and download the Node.js, and of course this is available for all the available operating system, so you can install it. Once this is installed, open any terminal and just run node-v. This will give you the installed version of Node. As long as it shows any version, that's well and good. I would highly recommend you guys to have something greater than 20. That would be the better. If you can install the latest, that's also better. Okay, so no problem at all. npm comes along with it, so you don't have to install anything else. Just to verify, you can just execute this command that will tell you some version. So npm is nothing but node package manager. Create React app is a package, so npm comes with the node that actually manages this kind of packages. Throughout this course, I will be using Visual Studio Code as my editor. You are open to use any editor that you are comfortable with. There is no restriction on it. This is just I am recommending. I will be using the same Visual Studio Code throughout the course. Those are all the things that is required for start developing our application in the local machine. Once you have everything, we can get started with creating the project. Of course, in the next video, we'll be start creating a project and try to understand how the project structure would be, how it is working, and everything we'll be going to understand in depth. Till then, bye. Take care. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do consider subscribe to the channel and don't forget to hit the bell icon. In this video, we are going to discuss about what is virtual DOM. We haven't discussed anything about virtual DOM, but we have heard the same topic in many different places saying that the performance of virtual DOM is quite good compared with other related things. So let's get started and see what are the agenda of this video. So first we'll be discussing about, we must have to know what is DOM. Then we will be discussing about the virtual DOM, and then we will see how virtual DOM works and then the differences. And we are having a diffing algorithm. I will be explaining what it is. Okay, that's it. So let's get started with introduction to DOM. DOM stands for Document Object Model. So document represent that the HTML document in an object manner. That's what it is. Document object model. We are representing HTML document in the object basis so that we can able to access. Who will access? JavaScript can access the HTML element. Okay, that's what DOM is. When you consider a DOM, it's like a tree-like structure so that you can access every element as a parent-child thing. So that's what the tree is all about. Whenever you are doing modification in the DOM, then the entire DOM supposed to be get repainted on the browser screen. If you are not aware of what the DOM is, how the browser works, here is a quick intro about that. DOM, as I said, is nothing but document object model representing HTML document in the form of objects so that it can be accessed with the help of JavaScript. DOM is a tree-like structure. Whatever the code that is available in the DOM, that only get rendered in the browser screen. If I wanted to do any modification in the DOM, then the browser supposed to repaint the entire page again. So that's what the usual flow of DOM is. Who will modify the DOM? JavaScript has the ability to do so. But the problem here is, whenever you are doing any change, it's supposed to repaint it. If you do 1000 changes, then the 1000 time repaint is supposed to happen. That's what the problem with the DOM manipulation is. And that process is actually very slow. Next thing is, that's what I'm saying. The direct manipulation is inefficient. Dynamic apps like FB, Instagram. Why I specifically said FB and Instagram? Because the content are so dynamic. So every time we are getting a new content. If you do any such kind of data-driven application and you have a lot of data-intense application that usually changes the data then and there in the UI, in that case, React is the best UI that you could build for. Okay, that's how it is. Next thing is, what is virtual DOM? We know what is DOM, but what actually the virtual DOM is? Virtual DOM is nothing but just the copy of real DOM. That's it. Okay, just the copy of real DOM. That's a JavaScript object. That's all, nothing apart from that. Now, we need to understand how this virtual DOM is created when it is created. I said virtual DOM is nothing but the real DOM's copy. Next thing is, when does that copy creates? When the initial render happens. We know that the render is happen once after the DOM tree build. So at the time the render starts, the build tree is actually built. The DOM tree is actually built. So once that process is completed, virtual DOM is created by taking the copy of actual DOM. Hope this is clear till now. Now we know what DOM is, what virtual DOM is. Now we need to understand how does that virtual DOM works. So virtual DOM gets created at the time the initial render of the component happens or the DOM happens. Whenever there is a change in the DOM or else in the states or props, of course we didn't understand what is states and props, don't worry, that's just the concept in React. Whenever there is a change in states or props, then the component state get changed. Once it gets changed, obviously the DOM supposed to get updated. That time the DOM supposed to get rendered on the browser screen. We are doing changes in the virtual DOM. React never do any changes in the actual DOM unless the changes are done. So even if it is 1000 change that happens, all those 1000 changes are happening in the virtual DOM. Once all the changes are applied on the virtual DOM, now React compares virtual DOM with the actual DOM. That comparison actually takes place with the help of diffing algorithm. So what this algorithm does? This algorithm compares each DOM line by line and take the changes, inject all the changes into the actual DOM in a single shot, which is nothing but batch update. Once that batch update is done, then the re-render happens, and this batch update happening on the actual DOM, which is nothing but your real DOM. Hope this is clear. Let me again explain how virtual DOM works. Virtual DOM gets created at the time the initial render of the application happens. I mean, once the actual DOM is created for the initial render, that takes the copy. Now the virtual DOM is created. Whenever there is a change happen in the component state, then the DOM supposed to get modified. So if that happens, the changes are happening on the virtual DOM. Nothing actually happening in the actual DOM. Once the changes are applied on the virtual DOM, React compares actual DOM with the virtual DOM. Whatever the changes that is happened on the virtual DOM, that actually applied as a single change as a batch update to the actual DOM. Of course, once the actual DOM is modified, then it's supposed to go through the re-rendering process. So instead of doing 1000 re-render, now I'm doing 1 re-render. That's virtual DOM advantages, and that's how the performance of the application increased. Next thing is, what is diffing algorithm? Why we need diffing algorithm? React uses diffing algorithm to compare actual DOM with virtual DOM. So how does this diffing algorithm works? We compare tree in hierarchical wise. You can think that is the line by line ways. So once that is happens, so if I have 1000 lines or 1000 branches in the tree, then the entire process takes approximately big of n times. So that's what I mentioned it here. Once that comparison is happened, then the changes are applied to the actual DOM as a batch update, and then the re-render happening on the browser side, then the screen get reflects. And that's what diffing algorithm is, and that's how diffing algorithm. So what the advantages? Here we'll be discussing little more on the advantages. First and foremost, minimize real DOM update. As of course, we are minimizing the real DOM update so that the performance will be better. Batch update happening on the actual DOM. Because of that, I am actually avoiding number of re-render happens. We don't have to do any manual optimization for this kind of rendering process. That will be automatically taken care by the React itself. Virtual DOM takes care of it. We don't have to do anything. The same virtual DOM concept is followed in the React Native framework. That's the JavaScript framework for developing mobile-based application. It is lighter. Virtual DOM is lighter. Whenever we are having a virtual DOM, that's quite lighter compared to the actual DOM. We do all the changes on the virtual DOM, then we apply the changes as a batch update to the actual DOM. All those things are nothing but the advantages of virtual DOM. Let me give a quick summary of what we discussed in this video. We started with what is virtual DOM. It's nothing but copy of actual DOM. When virtual DOM creates, when initial render happens, the actual DOM copy is created. That copy of the actual DOM is nothing but virtual DOM. React does all the changes. React do all the changes on the virtual DOM. Once the changes are applied on the virtual DOM, with the help of diffing algorithm, React compares virtual DOM with the actual DOM and do batch update of changes from virtual DOM to the actual DOM. Because of this functionality, number of re-renders reduced. Because of that, React able to provide a better performance compared with other things. If you can understand how virtual DOM works in the React, then the same is applicable to the React Native. That's a mobile app development framework using JavaScript, and that's also we have React virtual DOM concept, and the same is applicable to that as well. I hope this is clear, and we have covered almost all the topics with the basics that we need to proceed further with the application development. So from the next video onwards, we will be starting with the coding exercises. So how to create component, how to do the changes, how props, states, and everything we'll be discussing. Video we are going to discuss about components. We haven't discussed anything about component, we just heard the term component. We will be discussing that in depth and try to see what are all the things that is available in the component. So in this specific video, we will be discussing about what is component, what are all the types of component available, and each components and its syntax and those differences, and then we will be discussing about on which scenario you choose which component that opt for that specific scenario and project. So these are all the things we will be going to discuss. And if it in case this is the first time you land on this video course series, I'm just introduce myself saying that I'm Gopi. I'm having a decade of experience working with various web and mobile application development, and I'm here to share my knowledge on specifically React with you all. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to get notification for every video that we are uploading here. So without spending any time, we'll just jump into the actual content of the video. So first and foremost, what is component? So component are nothing but a reusable building block of UI. You just consider that it is a function, the function going to return a set of HTML code. That's it. It could be a function or class, that's apart, but just think that it's just the function going to return some HTML code. So component is nothing but reusable building blocks. This component represent any part of the web page. It could be a single text box, it could be a button, it could be a heading, or it could be a specific section of the page, or else the entire page. For sake of example, if you can consider this Amazon website, you can see that there are many different details are available. If you see this, there is a box or a container, and you can see this container is also similar to this. There is a header. They actually shows 4 different product and also shows the total views. Of course, here they didn't, but still they have the things. So this is what we call it as component. This button could be a component. If I get into this tool, you could see that the page is similar, and you can see the buttons look similar. So this could be a button. This entire box could be a button. This specific drop down could be a button, or this entire content. Okay, this entire content. If you get into another product, this will look similar. If I take this pillow, you'll be seeing that the page is actually similar. So how does they able to do that? And that's what the component is all about. So component is nothing but a simple reusable building block of code that could be anything within the web application. So our main agenda is to create a component that could be reusable wherever we need. Next thing is, what are all the type of component available? And of course, there is a class based component and function based component. Class based component are nothing but the legacy component, which means the old project having those kind of component. And function based components are nothing but the recent one. Both are actually available in the same thing, but still React core team not recommend us to use class component. Let's try to understand how does a function component looks like. What are the advantages that we have in the function component? First and foremost, function component is nothing but just a JavaScript function. That's all. And this function going to return me a JSX code, which is nothing but a HTML code. That is the content going to render on the page. Next thing is hook method. There are many different inbuilt hook methods are available. That hook method helps you to do some kind of additional functionality within this component. And of course, there is a way to create our own custom hook method as well that will do custom functionality within the function component. This binding is no needed. Of course, this always represents to the object. Function doesn't have anything to do with the object. So here we don't have any concept like this at all. So the syntax for function component is always clearer. Custom hooks, as I said already. If you are not aware of what is hooks, you just think that there is a various event available. Let's say example, if I have to place my bet and I have to take some kind of guts. So that's nothing but event. So on each stages, there are many different events available. That's event, we call it as hook method here. Use state is a hook method. Use effect is a hook method. We will be discussing about those hooks in depth as we further move into the course, but still as of now, hooks are nothing but inbuilt method that do some kind of functionality within the component. Here you can see the sample code that tells how this thing is working. Function counter. So this is just the JavaScript function, and I'm having a variable constant, having a set const use state. We don't know what is use state at all. We will be discussing that afterwards, but you can see this specific counter function returns a button. This is JSX code, and this JSX code going to render on the UI screen. That's all about the function component. Next thing is class component. In this class component is actually, as I said, it is a legacy one, but still it follows the ES6 class. So okay, ES6 is nothing but the version of the class version of the JavaScript that was introduced quite long back, and that version of the JavaScript has class functionality, and that class got inherited from react.component class. That's it, nothing specific apart from that. Every class component will be having a render method, and that render method returns me a JSX code, and that JSX code will get rendered on the user screen. That's all. That's the primary difference. Okay. We know function component as various hook method. Example, use effect, use state. Likewise, class component as lifecycle methods. Those lifecycle method tells what should I do when the class component load. What should I do once the component load completes? What should I do when that component work is done and I wanted to remove that? And that's what is nothing but life cycle. So every human being having a life cycle. Likewise, the component is also having a life cycle, and that life cycle methods available only for class component. Example, life cycle method for class component is component did mount. Okay. And then class component handles states. We haven't discussed anything about state, but just think that there is a way called state that can be accessed with the help of this keyword. This keyword is actually bound to the object. Next thing is, this is the sample class component code. If you see, there is a class keyword, class name. This welcome class get inherited from react.component, and this react.component class is actually coming from React library. If I remove this, then this is just the class of ES6 with a function. That's all. Okay. If I include this extends, which means I'm inheriting from react.component into a welcome class. So this class has a method called render. Whatever the HTML code which call as JSX, so whatever the JSX code returns, that rendered in the browser screen. Next thing is, what are all the differences? Of course, we must have to know the differences so that you will know when to use which component. First thing is syntax. Of course, function component is just the function. Class component is a class. So that is a difference in the syntax. Next thing is how each component handles state. Here, class component uses this dot state. Function component uses use state. Next thing is lifecycle method. Of course, lifecycle method available only for class component, not for the function component. Performance. When it comes to performance, function component is lighter compared to the class component, because here we have object and all those things that actually makes the component heavier. Function component doesn't have any such kind of the thing, so it is lighter compared to the class component. So that's the difference. Next thing is various state method. Of course, this state method is nothing but how we are handling the methods, what are the things that we are going to do, what are the lifecycle methods available, what are the hooks method available, that differences. We'll be discussing them in depth, and keep that in mind. Now we are going to discuss about when to use which component. Keep that in mind. Class component is legacy one. React core team doesn't recommend anyone to use class component unless your version of React is quite older. As far as I know, all the projects have been upgraded to the latest version. So everywhere you go, we will be using function component only, because it is lighter, it fast well, it has a better performance compared to the class component. Here we are having a class component which is legacy one. It's available only in the older project. That's what it is, legacy one. Function component is a recommended way that I already told, and all the new projects follows the function component. By this time, we come to know various advantages, disadvantages of different types of components, what component is, how does work, and what data it returns, what we do usually with that data. All those things we have discussed and understood. Now it is time to see or learn another topic called virtual DOM that we'll be discussing in the next video. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video in the React.js series. In this video, we are going to discuss about how we are going to create a component and how to use that component in the application. In the last video, we were discussed about components, what is component, what are all the types of component available and those things. Now, we are going to create a component programmatically and make use of that component in the application. Keep in mind, whatever the React component that I'm going to create, that is function based component. As I said in the last class, we are not going to focus anything on the class component. So let's get started and jump on to creating a new component. Before that, if you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel, please do consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. And we have started a very good React series, and that's focusing mainly on the beginner friendly. Hope this is good to everyone. We can get started with the session. So let me go into the source directory, and if you want, you can create a new directory called component, and then you can create a new file, and that depends upon what the component is all about. In my case, I'm just going to create a dummy component first of all. So let me create a file within the components directory. The file name could be anything. In my case, I'm going to keep that as a button.js. So button.js. You can keep JSX or button.js. That shouldn't be an issue at all. That's quite good. I'm creating a file. So now the file is empty. I'm going to create a function. This is going to be an arrow function. If you are not aware what the arrow function is, that's a type of function available in JavaScript. The syntax should be like constant button. Button is the name of the component. I'm just maintaining it, and then I'm having a function. This is the function component. So I created a function. If you are not aware of arrow function syntax, this is how it should be. This arrow, and this is going to be the parenthesis, and here I'm having a curly braces. This is the syntax. So I created one anonymous function and stored in the variable button. This is going to be the arrow function. Next, export default button. Okay, so that any other file can import the button component and make use of that. What does this button component going to return? That we can return right within this. So let's have a return statement. Okay, and then I am having a button, just the plain HTML button, nothing apart from that. Let's say a register. That's it. I'm not writing any CSS. I'm not writing anything. I'm just to the plain component. That's all. So now I have a component. The component is a return button, and I'm exporting that component by default. That's it. I'm not doing anything else. Now I'm going to make use of this button component. How should I do? Let me get into app.js. Within this division section, within this division, let me open another section. Let's say example section. Okay, within this section, I wanted to use the button component. What is the name? Button. So let's open button. You can see, right? This is how you have to use the button. So if you look at it here, I'm importing button. You can see I'm exporting button. So I'm importing button from where I'm exporting it, from where I'm importing it. So that is nothing but within the directory of component. Why I'm having single dot /? Because I'm having a app.js. Where I'm having app.js, in the same directory, I'm having a components directory. So from my current directory, I'm asking it to get into components directory and then try to access button.js file, and you can see the file is here. So from that file, import button component. Once it is imported, I can access it, and I have imported it. This syntax is fine, or else you can have something like this. Button, close, and you will be having something like this. We don't need this as of now, so let me remove that. Okay, both syntax is fine, but usually we will not use this syntax. Now let me get back to the screen, and you can see I got a register button. The button doesn't going to do anything. I'm just explaining how you can create a component. Now, how does this button click event will work? That we are going to do next. So let me get back to the button component. Whenever someone click on this register button, I just wanted to say registered successfully. Nothing apart from that, that's all. So let's have on click event. In this event, I wanted to have alert registration successful. Okay. Likewise, I'll be having something. So this is the alert method and this accepts a function. This is again an arrow function. Okay, this arrow function have a alert method. This supposed to get executed. The spelling is not right. So let me correct it out. Registration successful. Okay, so let me get back to the browser screen and see I'm having a registration successful. Okay. I'm refreshing it. I'm refreshing the page and then you can say I'm having a button. I'm just clicking on it. You can say I'm getting a OK. So why does that happen? Because I'm having a click handler. This click handler accepts a function and that function returns me an alert statement and that statement executes. This is one way of writing a click event, but in usual cases we will not have one line syntax. If you are having one line syntax, this is fine. If you are having a lot of line to do so, in that case lot of instruction that's supposed to get executed when you click on a button, in that case we will create a separate function constant click handler. This is again going to be the arrow function. This function going to execute a specific instruction. First and foremost, what I do is I am going to print something in the console.log saying the button got clicked. That's it. This is the first statement. Second statement is alert button got clicked. The same thing, so that it become easy for me, right? So copy paste. This work is completed. Now I don't need this part. Let me comment this line so that we don't have to get confused. So you can refer both the things. Okay. Now I'll be passing click handler method name here. Now if I get back to the screen, let me open the inspect element, get into the console screen, and you can see the console screen is clear as of now. I'm refreshing it. You don't have to manually refresh, that will be automatically handled, but for the sake of example I'm just referring it. Okay. Next thing is I'm clicking on a register button. You can see the button got clicked, printed in the console screen, as well as I got an alert message. Okay. That's how this thing is working. Now we know how you can handle a button click event within the component. Okay. Next thing is how I can customize this functionality. Example, throughout my application I wanted to have a single design for a button. Of course I can have that button component created like this, but how will I able to have a different functionality, different scenarios? That's where the props comes into the picture. We will be discussing about props in the next video. In this video, that's all about the content. Yeah. Let me reiterate whatever we discussed in this video. We created a new component called button and we created a HTML button and then we populated on the screen. We wanted to have some kind of functionality on the button, so we just created one event called onClick. In that event, it will execute a function and that function gives me a alert statement stating that the registration was successful. Even though we haven't handled any other functionality, we just shown an alert message. That's it. Next thing is another way of handling a function. I'm having an onClick event. This onClick event internally execute or call this click handler function. I created one click handler function. Keep in mind I'm having this click handler function within button component. Okay, keep that in mind. The function, whatever the function you're creating, that's supposed to be outside a return statement, but that must be present within the button component. Okay, so I'm having a function. This function will get executed when user clicks on the button. So this is how you need to handle events in function or in component. Okay, I hope this is clear. We'll be discussing about props in the next video. Till then, bye.
We're going to use states. So let's get started. Here is the agenda for today's video. What is states and what is the difference between props and states? In the last video we discussed about props. So here we are starting with states and then we will see some code samples. As I said in the props video, this is going to be the introduction video for states, and here we are specifically discussing only about theory. We are not looking at anything practically. In the next video that is dedicated for practical video where we'll be creating states and see how we can use it in the project. Let's get started with what is states. So states are nothing but a JavaScript object that is dynamic, that actually access within the component. That's what the state is. You can simply think that state is nothing but an object that helps you to maintain the state, the current state of the component within that component. That's what the behavior is. If state changes, then obviously the components is also get changed. That's how it is. Once the state changed, component changed, then obviously the component is supposed to go through the re-rendering process. Next, here you can see this is the important point. Props, whenever you are having props, that actually user to pass data between the component. But in case of states, we are not going to pass the data anywhere. Instead, we try to maintain that data local to that component. And you can able to change states data as well. That is not possible with props. Okay, let's see some code example. So here, when I shown an example for props, we haven't done anything extra like importing something. But in case of states, right, you're supposed to import a hook method. In the introduction itself, I would have explained what the hook methods are. And here is the first hook method that we are discussing, which is nothing but use state. And then function, as usual, I'm creating a function component. And this is how we have to use state hook method. So I have a use state. This is nothing but the state that I'm creating. And this 0 is nothing but the default value for the state that I created. And for this use state hook method, it returns an array that I am destructuring by having this count and then set count. Count is a variable that hold the value. Set count is a variable that hold the function. So in a high level, use state is a hook method that helps you to handle or maintain state of the component. This use state hook method returns two different data. One is the state value, another one is a function that helps you to change the state value. Next thing is I'm just returning a function. That's what the functionality of the component is. And if you closely look at it here, I'm having an on-click event that internally as a function. You can see that's an arrow function that present within a curly braces, because functions are specific to the JavaScript. So that's supposed to be within a curly braces. Here is the arrow function. Within this arrow function, I'm invoking set count. As said, set count is a variable that hold a function. So I am literally invoking a function that stores on the variable set count, and then I'm passing a value, the parameter. So what the parameter is? Count plus 1. Where does this count come from? That's nothing but the variable that we created. That variable hold the
current value of the state, and that's what it is. I'm just incrementing it and then change the value of the state, and once the value is changed, and obviously that get printed as a text content, I mean the button text. That's all about the things, and that's it about the counter component. Next, what is the difference? We already discussed about the difference. Props can be passed between the component from parent to child, but the state is not for passing the data. State helps you to maintain the data within the component. Next thing is, props are immutable. Once the props are created, you cannot able to modify that. But in case of states, you can do so. That's all about states, and that's it for this video. Hope you got what is a state, what is the syntax for the state, and we will be discussing practically how you can implement the states in the upcoming video till we're going to use states. So let's get started. Here is the agenda for today's video. What is states and what is the difference? Guys, welcome back to another video in the React.js beginner tutorial series. In this video, we are going to discuss about how to implement states in our project. So if you look at it here, I have created one new app.js file for our references for this specific video, and I have started the project and it is working as expected. Now what are we going to do is, I'm going to use the hook method, use state in this specific component, and we'll work on it. I have imported other CSS files. We don't need that as of now. If anything required, I will be doing that respectively. So first and foremost, what I do is, within this welcome to React application, I'm going to create one text box and the button. Okay, so input type just to the text box, and I'll be having some ID. Let it be the ID as username, nothing specific, and then I'll be having a button. It's just to the button, nothing fancy or anything, just to the button. Okay, and then here I'll be having register. So what am I going to do is, whatever the data that I'm entering within this form, right? I mean within this form, that's supposed to be there in the form. Even if I click on the register text, whatever the data that I have it in the text, that gone. Why it actually gone? Because that's the page that's refreshed. At the time the page refreshed, the text box is actually empty, and we haven't provided any instruction to React that please hold the state of the text box. That we haven't done. So this is how we will be using states. So states helps you to maintain state of the element or the component within the component, not outside, within the component. Okay, the same scenario happen even if you put everything within a form. I don't want action. Okay, and I'll having a button. I will call this as a type submit, as we all know that submit is the button type when it comes within a form. Let's introduce use state. So use state is nothing but we don't need this either. Let me clear up index.js because it is having some references, it seems. No, we don't have. Okay, let's have import React. Import use state is a hook method, so let's import that. Okay, this use state hook method I imported from React library. Now I'll be using this use state within the component. So how can I use it? As I said in the previous video, constant, it will give me some data, right? Let's have an array. Array's first element is nothing but the text, whatever the text that we have in the text box. And then I'll be having one method that helps me to change the data of the text box. So set text. Where does this value come from? This value is actually coming from use state. This use state is a hook method. Default value for this use state method is empty text. That's it. Okay. Now, how am I going to use this? That's where events comes into the picture. We know that how to handle event within the component, but here we'll be having little bit extra. Within this text box, whenever I'm doing some on change means whenever the state of the text box changes, I will invoke a function that's again an ordinary function. Okay, this function internally helps me to set the text box value to the state. How will I do that? I have a text method. This method helps me to do so. e.target.value. This is the property that helps me to get the text box value, and that will be available in the state now. Okay, this is clear. Whenever the text box changes, the value of the text box actually passes to this method. Whenever there is a change in this method, that will eventually update the state variable. Where is the state variable? Text is the state variable. Using this variable, I can access the value that present in the text box. So now, all good so far. As I said, I'll be having a value property, and this value property contains text. That's all. Okay. Now, if I write something, let's say I'm having Gopi, and I'm clicking on register, you can see it's actually vanished. Why does that happen? I said use state helps me to do so. Let's check that. Here I'm having you on change, right? So let's something like this. So here what am I doing is within here console.log of whatever the text box value, whatever the state value that updates. Okay, I'm trying to do so console.log of text, right? And why does the value vanish? Because the default functionality for the form is to submit the text box to the server, submit the form to the server, and that's what happened here. What I do is I'll be having one more event here saying that submit. Okay, on submit is the event that will having a submit handler function. I'll be creating one function, okay, outside this return statement. The function, this is going to be an arrow function. Okay, this function gets an event. This will be passed by default by React. We don't have to do anything with that. That will handle by the JavaScript. Okay, first what I do is e.prevent default. So this is nothing but prevent, not prevent. Prevent default. So what actually this does is this stops the default behavior of the form. That's it. Okay, this is the first step. Once this is done, what I do is I'll be just printing console.log of whatever the text box value I'm having in the state. That's all. I don't want anything else apart from that. This is done. Let me shrink the size of the browser so that you can see the terminal. I'm focusing on that. Let me type my name, Gopi. Okay, and clicking on register button, and I will be opening the inspect. I forgot to open the inspect, so let me clear it out. So here you can see, let me remove. Okay, let me remove. It's empty form now. I'll be just typing my name, Gopi. You can see, right? Gopi. And then if I click on register, you can see I've got the latest value. So this is how we'll be getting. If I refresh, the form is refreshed. Of course, once it is refreshed, the value got vanished out of the state because the default value for the state is empty. So this is how it works. So before the form vanished, we try to capture all the data. So whatever the API call you are sending, whatever the content you are getting out, everything will be there forever. And that's what the state is all about. And we can do a lot of work within the state and all. As of now, we are just starting with that, right? I think this is fine. Next, what we will be doing is maybe in the next video, we will be creating a form, and that form we try to have some couple of field values and try to capture that field values and try to print that up in the screen. So let's see how does that is happening. That's what the state is. In the real world, that's how we will be handling. But here, for the sake of example and starting with the state, I just have this concise example with only one text box. Okay, I hope this is clear. We can connect in the next session. Then we'll be having even more hands-on with the states with the help of form. That's guys, welcome back to another video in the React.js beginner tutorial series. In this video, we are going to discuss about how to implement state. Everyone, welcome back to another video in the React.js beginner tutorial series. In this video, we are going to discuss about what is conditional rendering. If you are landing on this video series for the first time, please do consider that this is the beginner series where we are speaking everything from the scratch, that too specifically focusing on React.js. If you are actually the beginner who wanted to understand and learn the React.js from absolute scratch, then obviously this series is for you. If this is the first time you're watching the video, then I would highly recommend you guys to go to the playlist and start from the beginning, so that you will be having a very good understanding of the basics of React. Keep in mind, of course, knowing React.js is actually kind of a recommended. If you are good with React, if you are good with JavaScript, please do start with the first video. If you are already watching the series, then yeah, let's get started with the conditional rendering in this video. What is mean by conditional rendering? So conditional rendering in the sense, based on few condition, you will be rendering a part of the component. If that condition fails, you will not going to render the part of the component. That's what we call it as conditional rendering. So to demonstrate conditional rendering, let me take an example for logged in user. So if user logged in, I'll be showcasing dashboard menu in the menu item list. If that's not logged in that case, I'm not going to show the dashboard option. So likewise, we can start with simple example and then we'll proceed further with the other stuff. So let's get started with the coding part. So if you look at this app.js file, you can see I have only one conditional rendering development and the application is already running. Let me zoom it up a bit. So now this is fine. So let's start with the conditional rendering. So what we are going to do for sake of example for the conditional rendering is, first of all, I will just create one state variable and not going to actually implement the state functionality, just to the variable. And based on the value of the variable, I'm just going to change the way that the variable the component going to render. So first what I would like to do is, let me start with use state declaration. So let's have a state here. So constant my variable collection. So first of all, I'm going to have a variable. I just call it as value. Okay, so because just to the value, right? And then set value. And this value going to return from state. And what is going to be the default value? That's true. Okay, don't get too much logical understanding of the implementation. Just try to understand what I'm trying to explain. Okay, just trying to explain how conditional rendering works. That's all. Okay, nothing apart from that. Once this example is done, then we can have some kind of button and try to see how it actually works on those stuff. Okay, as of now, this is fine. Okay, I'm having a state and the state default value is true. If state value is true, keep in mind, if state value is true. Okay, there are many different ways of implementing this. If value, okay, if it is true, in that case, I'm going to return another division. Okay, this is again a kind of another component I'm about to return. What is this is the value is true. Okay, so let me go on to the screen. Now you can see, okay, the value is true. The conditional rendering part isn't rendering at all. Why? Because the value for this value variable, state variable, is true. That is the reason. Okay, if the value is false, in that case, obviously this condition doesn't going to satisfy. In that case, this will not going to render. Let me change the condition to false, saving it, and in this case I would be getting conditional rendering. This is an example of implementing conditional rendering. This is one way of doing so. We do have another way. Now what we can do is, to demonstrate conditional rendering, let me create one more component, and that component I will be passing some value from app.js to the child component. So in that child component, based on the props, it will try to render the data appropriately. Let's see how does it work. Let me remove everything from here. Okay, we are going to start everything from absolute scratch, just having a app.js. So let's have a division here. We know that it would always going to return some kind of HTML template. That's why we call it as a component. Let me create some button. So let's have two different button. Okay, I want two different button. This button is login and this button is log out. That's it, nothing specific, just the easiest way of explaining the conditional rendering. So you can see that why I'm not getting, okay, login button, logout button, nothing fancy, nothing extraordinary, just the button. And I'll be having on click event. Of course we do have some kind of functionality, so here as well I'm having on click, because that's a button. So I have on click, right? So whenever user clicked on login button, I wanted to update the state value. I'm going to create user logged in status, state constant is logged in. Okay, that's a variable, and then set is logged in. And what would be the default value? Use state of false, because by default the user is not logged in. So I want the user supposed to be as logged out person. So now it is fine. Whenever user click on login button, I want to set is logged in to true. That's it. And the reverse is going to be the logged out. Okay, let me have an example. Okay, here I supposed to write something like this and I will be passing false. Okay, this we already know how this is working. Now this part is completed, and after this division, okay, after this division I wanted to pass something more data. Let's say example, I'm just thinking, do I need to create one more component, or is it fine if I just to show something here? I think I can have something here itself. So let's have a main. Within this main, what I'm going to do is I will be populating some part, okay, based on the value. So what could be the value? Is logged, okay, is logged in. Okay, if user is logged in that case I wanted to render division, okay, welcome user. If suppose the user is not logged in that case I'll be doing the reverse of whatever it does. Okay, just the single division element, so I think it doesn't going to do much. Let's have a division. Let's have this division. And this is not a JavaScript expression, so let's have this here. Please log in. This is what I wanted to do as a simple example. So let's get on to the screen. You can see I'm having please login. By default it is please login, because default value for the state is false. If it is false, we just show please login. I'm clicking on login. You can see welcome user. Again login, welcome user, doesn't going to change because the same state, same value. That only going to update, nothing apart from that. If I click on logout, you can see please again. Now we know we are actually changing the value, the component that going to render based on the value that we have in the state. That is called as conditional rendering. If you wanted to have same kind of behavior in the next component or the child component, in that case you just have to pass is logged in value as a property. How to do so? Let's do. Let me create one more component called child.js, and this is again going to be a component. Why take this much time? Yeah, I'm having a component constant child. This is going to be the functional component. So return whatever the main, I'm having it over there, whatever the main. Okay, copy, put it here. Returning this is logged in is a parameter. That's a props that we get from the parent component. Okay, That's it, and I'm just responding it to the export default child. So now I can import this child in the app.js component. Where it is here, I need to populate the component. So what is the name? Child component. Okay, and this child component supposed to get imported child, right? And this child accept a parameter. You can have different name, shouldn't be an issue. That's up to you. I'm just keeping the same name as it is. Logged in equal to, again, the logged in. This is how you need to do so. In this case, you can see I'm having please log in, and if I click on login button, welcome user, logout button, please log in. So this way you can do the conditional rendering. Got it? I hope this is clear for explaining conditional rendering. If you are having any questions, any clarification, you can just put it in the comment box. I'll be responding it as soon as possible. Let me quickly reiterate what we have discussed in this video. Conditional rendering, nothing but based on a condition we are going to render a part of the component. So if the condition satisfies, we'll be populating something. If the condition doesn't satisfy, we'll populate some other component content. That's all, nothing apart from that. And that's what we have achieved with the help of state. This can be achieved between the components as well, and that example also have covered it here. If you have any questions, any clarification, just put it in the chat box. I'll be answering them as soon as possible. Hope this. Welcome back to another video in the React.js beginner tutorial series. In this video, we are going to discuss about React fragments. So what the React fragment is, why we need it. So before proceeding further with that, we just have to understand, whenever you are having component, the component can return only a set of HTML code. That's it. Let me take an example here. If you look at it here, we don't need this. This is an older example. I have another fresh app.js file. The application is already running up. So let me change this. New fragment. Just I'm adding a random text here so that you know the page is refreshing with the latest data. So now what we are going to do is, here I'm returning only one HTML content. I can have more than one HTML content underneath this division tag. Let's say example lorem of 5, but this is not possible. Okay, here itself you can see, right, when I try to return more than one element from the component, I'm getting error. It started getting red scrolly here. So why this? Because React doesn't support this. If you look at the error message, you can clearly see that's a parsing error stating that adjacent JSX element must be wrapped within an enclosing tag. So that's what the condition that we have it in the React, because we are following the JSX, so a component supposed to return only one element at a time. So what shall we do? So we usually do just wrap everything within a division tag or something. Okay, that depends, section tag or main or something like that. So here I have wrapped everything within a division tag, but keep that in mind, we don't need this. I don't want this division at all, but this division is just created for the sake of avoiding the error message. So let me get back to the screen of the browser. Now we can see everything is populated properly. Let's go to the inspect element. You can see the source code. I'm having the division underneath. I'm having a division. This division is not required. Okay, this division it not at all required, because just wrapped this to child to remove the error. Now this division is populated. Of course, that's an extra division that will need some time to render on the DOM. So how to avoid that? How to overcome that? And that's where fragment comes in. So here I can have a fragment. Okay, this fragment is actually coming from React. Okay, so if I go back to the screen, if I go back to the browser screen once after the compilation is completed for the fragment, a fragment is not defined because that's supposed to get imported. Done. Now you can see I don't have that extra division. That's where this is all about. Okay, that's where the fragment is all about. So wherever you are having extra element, the division or something, if you wanted to avoid the error message, in that case you can go for the fragment, and this is only for avoiding the error message. This fragment doesn't going to get added into the DOM element. Okay, you can either use fragment or else you can just remove them. Remove this import statement as well. This is also fine. Absolutely, you will be getting the same result. There won't be any change. This is what we call it as fragment. So that's all for the video. So let me reiterate it one more time. So fragment is nothing but whenever you wanted to return more than one element from a component and you don't want it to get any extra node into the DOM, then go for fragment. So the fragment is actually quite easier. So this is how the syntax should look like. Okay. So the entire course is focusing only on the React beginner things. Now we have started with the advanced level of React things like hook methods. We already discussed about use state, use memo, and then use effect now. And we'll be discussing about context and reference as well in the upcoming videos. So please stay tuned to the video course and let me know any questions in the comment section of that specific video. I will be soon replying to that course. If we aren't able to come up with the solution within the comment section, then I will try to upload a new video on the section. Then without spending any time, let's get started with this video. I have created one new project. It's not a project, just to the component, and started the application, and you can see that printed welcome to use effect. That's the one that we are discussing now. I have app component. Within this app component only we are going to discuss all those things. So let me change this return. We don't need this. Use effect, as I already said, a method that execute once the render is completed, or else if any of the dependency get changes. So that's how the use effect hook method works. But here I haven't taken any scenario. We just have to take a scenario to record the video. So what practical thing that we are going to take? The practical thing is we can just take anything like toggle, theme toggle, which is quite popular in the market when to use state and those things. Or if you wanted to have something like online offline status of the user, or some timer related stuff, and then scroll to top whenever there is a change in the component. All those things can be achieved with use effect. Here we are going to discuss about a theme toggler, because that's one of the popular example in the market, and you will be able to easily grab what the things are, how you can implement the best practices and those things as well. What are all the best practices that I am discussing for hooks, especially with use effect? The same thing can be applicable to all the hooks. Okay, don't get confused. This is just the common concepts. So first and foremost, what I like to do is I create a state constant. I'll just have a theme and then set theme, because that's a toggler, right? So use state. You can keep any default value here. As of now, I just keep light or dark, whatever that you are comfortable, just keep it as a default theme. This is fine. That's all about that. So that state work is completed. Now what we need to do is we wanted to create a use effect. So use effect. So use effect is a hook method that accepts two parameters. One is nothing but your callback function. Another one is the dependency. Now we know the syntax. The syntax is as same as use memo syntax. So I just have to proceed further. Now within this use effect, what I would like to do is I'll be just reading the theme and try to set up the light based on the design. Okay, so where would I save? So here you can see I have a theme use state that eventually store the state of the component alone, but I wanted to save it somewhere else. Example, like if user have selected dark, I should save it somewhere, even though if I refresh the component or anything, the value should not change. So obviously you can store this kind of data in a local storage, because those data are non-sensitive. So you can store it in the local storage itself. If you are not aware of what the local storage is nothing but the browser application level memory within the browser itself. I'll be demonstrating you where you can see the local storage. Right click, go to inspect. There is an option called application tab. Click on it and let me reduce, and you can see there is an option called local storage. If I open, this is the local host that I'm currently working with, and what I'm storing here, I have nothing in the local storage as of now as part of the local host 3000. Now what I do is, we write some JavaScript code in the application, and that will eventually store the selected theme in the local storage. So first what I do is, at the time the app component loads, I wanted to read whatever the data that is in the local storage with the key theme or selected theme. I'll be just storing it in the selected theme variable. Keep in mind, this is nothing but my local variable. This is the key that we stored in the local storage. As of now, the local storage is empty. Obviously, we'll be getting null here. So, no problem at all. We will be getting some validation. So, if selected theme, if selected theme is apart from undefined null, then in that case, it will just come in. So, what I do, I will just set the selected theme as selected theme. That's it. So, whatever that I'm having it here, I just set it. That's all. Okay. And then I will just set document.body. Where is the class name? Here I'm having a class name, right? I can just add the selected theme. Why? Because here I am setting CSS class name directly to the body. So whatever the CSS class I'm adding, that will eventually reflect in the screen. Okay. Next, what we are going to do is, now we have set the theme of whatever that's stored in the local storage. What if we don't have any theme that's stored in the local storage? In that case, we might wanted to add more code. Now, if you look at it, I have done the changes. I have a callback, and that callback will execute when the component render is completed. But it doesn't have any dependency. If it doesn't have any dependency, in that case, it will execute for one time only, at the time after the rendering is completed. Okay, that's how it works, and that's how the use effect is. Is it fine if I write everything within the same callback function? It doesn't, because there is a concept called separation of a concern that will eventually have to separate every functionality function wise. And also we have a single responsibility which tells a function or class supposed to take care of only one functionality. And this part is completed. Now let's add even more complexity. This is done. This use effect will execute at the time when the component get loaded. Now let me add one more use effect. What this use effect is? This use effect will execute only when there is a change in this theme variable. When will this theme variable change? When user toggle between the theme. So let's write a code here. I have a callback function and then the list of dependency. As of now, my only dependency is my theme variable. So let's add the theme variable. That's it, nothing apart from that. If the theme variable get changed, in that case only it will execute, because it's the use effect that has a dependency. If the dependency changes, then obviously this callback method get executed. Till now, everyone are clear. Now what I'm going to do is, whatever the theme that I'm having, so let's try to set up. Let's have a local storage dot set item. I'm going to set item. I'm having a key. This is the key. So let's add the key and whatever the theme that the user have selected. That's it. Now there is a question. So this theme is nothing but a use state variable that actually hold the current value, and I'm having the same as dependency. Where will I change? Of course, this use effect execute only once at the time when the component rendered. But what if the component rendered, now user wanted to change the theme? Of course, I need to have some kind of event with the button or something like that. That will be implementing a little later. Now this part is completed till how we wanted to implement. Next thing is I just copy paste the theme, same thing, nothing apart from that. That's all. Okay. Now the toggle functionality is completed between the theme and between the use effect. Now let's have some UI code. Let me have a division tag. Within this I'll be having a button, and this button will be having a on click. Whenever there is a click, I wanted to change the state value. So E, that's the function. So set theme, whatever the theme that I am having. So whatever the existing value that the theme has, that I am saving it in the previous variable, and this is another function. If previously stored data in the state is equal to light, in that case I wanted to change that to dark theme, or else I wanted to just keep it as a light itself. I don't wanted to do any changes here. Now till now this part is completed. I'm having some kind of error here because of question mark. The syntax is actually different. Here I'll be having toggle theme. That's all about the button implementation. Now you can see that I didn't use this if you don't wanted this kind of implementation, you can have one more method here, constant toggle theme. I will just implement this as it is, and I don't need them. And once this is done, I'll be just adding the name. That's all. This is even more clearer version of implementing the theme. Let's see whether it works or not. I'm having some error, so let me clear that up and go back to the application. Let me click on toggle theme. So here you can see selected theme is dark, because by default the selected theme is light, but I didn't see anything here. You can see right, it's by default is empty. Why does it empty? Because I didn't have any CSS code. Let's add some CSS code. Let's have a paragraph. Currently currently selected theme. What is the theme? That whatever that I'm having it in the theme variable. Now you can see that I'm having currently selected theme is dark. Let's write some CSS. We need to have the CSS code because in the CSS only we are having, right? Now what we are going to do is I'm going to import everything from app.css. That's it. App.css. Is this outside or inside? Yeah, this is outside, and it's supposed to have app.css. That's it. Now within this app.css I'll be creating dot light. If it is light, I wanted to have the background color to white and the font color to black. Same thing, just copy and reverse it. That's it. Okay, this is for dark, and here I can have FFF and then That's all about the design. Now you can see black background with the white color text. Let me change. Now you can see, right? You can also see the value in the local storage is getting updated. Okay, this is done hopefully. Now we know how to use effect, and apart from that, if you are wanted to send some API call or so, you can do so. Keep in mind, you can have we already discussed about use memo. If you wanted to have more than one use memo in a same component, you can use it. It shouldn't be an issue. Each use effect will be having a different kind of functionality to achieve, so we don't have to worry about implementing this. This is one example for the separation of concern with the hook method implementation. We are going to discuss about another hook method, which is nothing but use effect. We will be discussing about that and what is use effect, syntax, and its respective code example. Of course, we are not going to discuss how to implement this in the project. That we will be discussing in the next video. this is the only agenda for this video. We'll be discussing them others in the next one. So let's get started with what is useEffect. As we all know that useEffect is nothing but an hook method. That method will execute after the rendering of the component is completed. As a side effect, we can execute this useEffect hook method that will perform some kind of actions that helps you to achieve something like fetching data from API, running some timers, or else you can clean up something. Example, you have triggered the timer and you wanted to clean up the timer at the time when component get removed from the memory or it's get unmounted. In those scenarios, useEffect will be helpful. Next, we will be discussing about how does this syntax looks like. The syntax is actually quite simple. So before getting started with the syntax, we just have to understand how many parameter does useEffect accepts. This useEffect hook method accepts two different parameters. One is nothing but a function, another one is nothing but list of dependencies. Whenever there is a change in the dependency, then the callback function get executes. If suppose the dependency list is empty, in that case the callback function executes only once and that's it, nothing apart from that. So you just have to keep in mind, whenever you wanted to execute the useEffect callback function, in that case dependency is supposed to be there. If dependency is not available, in that case it will not execute after one time. So here is the syntax. So useEffect, as we all know that that's an inbuilt one, and this useEffect accepts a function and then a list of a dependency. If you look at it here, this is nothing but a function and here is a list of dependency. Now the dependency is empty. In that case, the entire callback function get executed only once after the component rendered. That's it. If you have any dependency and there is any change in this dependency's data, in that case the callback function execute, however it may be the number of times the dependency get changed. So that is how useEffect works. And that's all about this video. Let me reiterate one more time shortly and then we'll catch up on the next video. So useEffect is nothing but hook method. That hook method execute a function after initial rendering is completed, and of course this useEffect callback function get executed then and there whenever the dependencies get modified. And then if you wanted to handle any cleanup process or something, in that case also this will execute. So we'll be having some code example for that as well. In the next video, we will be discussing about how you can use useEffect in the real world example, and we'll proceed further with the other stuff. Hello guys, welcome back to another video in the React.js series. In this video, we are going to discuss about a hook method which is useMemo. Now, if this is the first time you are landing on this video series, this is the video series. We are focusing only on the beginners who doesn't have any experience with React. Having some JavaScript experiences would be highly recommended for this video course. If suppose you like the video course, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you will be getting notification for all the videos that we are uploading. I hope this is clear for the introduction. In this video, we are going to discuss about useMemo hook method. Let's try to understand what these hook methods are. Hook methods are nothing but an inbuilt method that comes along with React.js so that they come up with some purposes. Example, we already discussed about useState. That useState hook method helps me to handle or maintain the state for the application. Hook methods are nothing but a method that comes along with React so that you can achieve something more with the inbuilt React. We already discussed about useState hook method. That hook method helps you to catch the state of the component. Likewise, useMemo is another hook method that helps you to memorize the value or the calculation or whatever the functionality that you are doing within the useMemo hook method, and that is what we call it as use memo, and that's the exact purpose. So here is the application that I already created and it is running. So now we are going to take a scenario and try to write a code that explains you how use memo hook method works. So first and foremost, what I would like to do is let me remove this and let me create some dummy data. So dummy data within a state. So just to make sure we have catch up on the state. So let's have one variable called constant data. This variable will be containing some object, so collection of object. This object could contain only easiest data, let's say example ID1, and name would be like, we can take any name, let's take a student name or a fruits name or vehicle name, something like that. In my case, I'm just taking vehicle name. So let's start with Magendra and then a price, not specific to any model. I'm just taking some random price. So random price is some 10,000 or 1 lakh, something like that. Let me copy this so that I can duplicate and prepare another object for us. So this is done. So let me change the ID and the name. Here I put Maruti and here I put Hyundai. Okay, now I have 3 different products. So one is Mahindra, Hyundai and Maruti. So what am I going to do is, I'm having this collection of data. Now I wanted to apply some kind of sorting or searching within this data. So we all know that a searching operation or a sorting operation need the reshuffling of the data, so which needs some kind of a computation power. In this is one of the exact scenario where we can implement use memo. So as I already said, use memo is nothing but an inbuilt hook method that helps you to memorize the calculation or whatever the functionality you did until unless the dependency gets changes. So that's what the memo is. Now I'm ready with the data. So before modifying anything within this component, let me try to create one use memo variable. So constant sort products. So that's the variable, products equal to use memo. This use memo is the inbuilt method, the hook method, and this is the one that I'm going to use. So this hook method accepts 2 different parameters. One is nothing but your function that actually holds the logic of your computation, so whatever it may be. In my case, the sorting functionality or searching functionality. And then I'm going to pass one more dependency, one more parameter, which is nothing but list or array. Okay, this is going to be the dependencies. So what this dependency is all about, what is the purpose of having this function? This callback function actually holds the actual logic of doing the computation. In my case, I'm just going to sort the data. Okay, so I'm going to write the sorting functionality within this callback function. So sorting implementation, I'm just adding a command, sorting implementation, and next thing is nothing but your dependency list. You can add n number of dependencies. So why we need this dependency? Because whenever there is a change in the dependencies, in that case only this callback function get executed. Till then it will not execute after the first computation. Okay, let me repeat it again. Use memo method helps you to memorize the computation that has already completed. Until unless there is no change in the dependencies, it will not re-execute this function. Okay, so till then it just give you the same result again and again. That is what we call it as use memo functionality. Right, so that's what the dependency purposes and everything. Now what am I going to do is, here is the actual data, right? I'm just assuming that this data could change in the future. So in that case, let me copy the data as it is and add that up in the dependency list. So now if there is any change in this dependency, in that case only this callback function get executed. Otherwise it will not execute. It will just keep on giving you the same memorized data. Why we use this kind of functionality? Because this kind of a scenario helps you to achieve a better performance whenever you are having a lot of list data. Here I'm having just 3 data. Whatever the functionality that I do with this data, that doesn't going to affect anything, nothing at all. But in the real world, the scenario would be different. You will be getting a lot of data. So 1000 data, 2000 data might be wanted to load more than that as well. In that cases, your performance will be affecting the front-end user experience. So how shall I improve that? And that is where this use memo comes into the picture. And that's how we save the user's performance. Okay, so it will always gives you the memoized data unless the change happens to the dependency list. In this case, I just passed data as a dependency. Okay, so now we have added the dependency. Let's try to have some logic that actually sorts the data. So before adding logic, we just have to have some UI related things, right? How to have the sorting things. So let's have the component code. In return, what am I going to return is, let's have a division tag. Within this division tag, let's have a select. So what this select going to do is, here I'll be having 2 different options. So 2 different options. So one option, and whatever the option that we are having, right, that's related to how you wanted to sort the data. So first one is by name, second one is by price or ID, something like that. Okay, this is how it is. But how will you track the change and all? For that, we have a change event. On change event, so we will be having the change as it is. We will be modifying that code, and then the current selected value. Okay, current sort by value. So I'll be having sort by. That's it. I'm having some errors here stating for that event and all. I will be correcting that up maybe in a short time. So before to that, let me try to create one state. Okay, here constant. So here I'm creating the state. So let's have use state, and the default value for the state is nothing but name. Okay, I will be having a small name. And what it going to return is going to return a 2 different data. One is nothing but sort by, we know that the value, and then set sort by. That's it. That's a function. Now I will be modifying this sort by, and based on that, the data supposed to get rearranged or resorted, and then it's supposed to print it on the output screen. So where you wanted to store the data, and that's where we will be having a function. So let's have that one by one. So I have a sorted product. We will be populating them one by one. Let's copy the sorted product, and after this division, let's have some UL element or LI element, however the way that you wanted you can create, and let's have a extend expansion. Now this throws error. So let's add a fragment that will eventually avoid the error. If you are not comfortable with the fragment, please go to the previous videos and try to see what the fragments are. We have already covered that up in the previous video. Now I'm just looping through this collection. Now we wanted to understand what does this sort products work. See, sort product is nothing but a function. Okay, but that's the variable as of now. That variable contains whatever the data that returns by use memo. That is what this is all about. Okay, so if it returns any data, I'm working on that data. Of course, sort use memo function will return me data, and that data only I'm about to populate in the screen. So that is why I'm just going to loop through this sort product. Okay, to loop through all the content, I'll be having a map function so that I'll have access to all the function. This X actually holds the product, actual product, and then I'm having a LI element, and this LI element will populate the product name and those details because I'm having those data, right? So here is the data. I'm having ID, name and price. So let's have a name and price that get populated here. And here I'm having X, and then I'll be having the property. So first property is name, and this going to have this much price. That's it. And then this is looping. Since we are looping through that, we're supposed to provide some unique value here. I can have x.id. So every data in this li element is actually unique. Now it has some problem. We will be fixing that problem, and then we'll iterate the code again. This is done so far. Now what am I going to do is, this is for populating the data, and this is for to handle the sort by the filter options. And I'm having one event here, that's nothing but on change event. What's supposed to do when there is some change? So let's accept a function. This function actually update set sort by. Okay, here I'll be having e.target.value. That's it, nothing apart from that. This itself will take care of all the kind of work. Okay, this is how it works. Now this HTML, the component related UI related code is completed. We'll be getting into the actual logic of sorting implementation. So here what I do is, I'm having I'm having a data, right? Let's create a copy of the original data. Why we need the original data copy? Because we are not going to do anything with the original data. I'm just taking the copy, and in that copy only I'm just performing the sort operation. And once this is copied, then I'll be just returning the data. Okay, that's all, nothing apart from that. Let's create a variable called d, and I'm having a data in it. If you take this could be a shallow copy. I don't want shallow copy. Let's have a data. So this will eventually create the deep copy operation. Now if suppose sort by variable holds the data which name, in that case I wanted to sort based on the name. So I'm having a copied data on the variable d, then d dot sort, that's the inbuilt functionality, but this sort function accepts another callback function. Here we will be writing some code, and this a comma b, I'm just sorting, right? So we need a and b data, so I'm trying to sort it out. A dot whatever the data we are having, dot name is the actual parameter, and just I wanted to, you can compare and then replace, that's a local compare with b dot name. That's how the sorting is completed. Based on this logic, it will just sort the data. Or else, okay, or else if suppose sort by variable hold the data of price, because that's another one, right? So let's have a price. In that case also I'm going to do sort operation, but here also the callback function going to perform based on price value. So a comma b, I'll just bracket a comma b, and then here I'm having a dot price minus b dot price. So based on that it will eventually sort the data. That's all about the sorting functionality. Once this implementation is completed, we are done with the sorting. But once the data is sorted, I wanted to return that outside of the function. So this is the data that will eventually return every time. Now we wanted to look at the dependency. Why? Because every time there is a change in the data, I will just execute this callback function. That execution will be maintained by useMemo. But what will happen if I change the sort by? Of course, I haven't added that up in the dependency list. In that case, it will not going to resort the collection. That will create me a problem. So instead what I do is I'll just copy the sort by and then put it over here. Now we have added the dependency. Let's see if there is any error present here or not. You can see I'm having by ID, by name, whatever the data, whatever the sort operation I'm just selecting, I'm not getting anything working. So let me get into inspect to see if there is any error. I'm having some error here. Let's try to understand what error that I'm getting. You can see cannot read properties of undefined reading a map. So here I'm having a map. Okay, this map actually work with the sorted product, but it doesn't. It has thrown some problem. So how we can fix this? That's what our next thing is. So I was going through the code and try to figure out the problem. Now we have to focus only on this area where I have an option, but I haven't passed the data what the value for that option is. So I have done this, and then this needs to be done, and then here I need to add the return keyword. That's all, nothing apart from that. Apart from that, everything is fine. All those things are working as it is. If you can look at it here, I'm getting Mahindra, Hyundai and Maruti. And if I change this by ID, needs to be modified. Let's have by price, and we can see I'm having Hyundai, Mahindra and Maruti. So let me change by price. There won't be any change because that's a default data, because everywhere it is over 10 lakh. So let me change this data as well to 20 and 30 respectively. So maybe remove 1 0. So I'm having Maruti, Mahindra and then Hyundai, because as of now the data is populated based on the price. Let me change that by name, and you can see Hyundai, Maruti and then Maruti. Let me change by price, and you can see the sorting is actually happening, and that's how memoization work. So this is the purpose of memoization. So unless this changer modifies and or else the sortable modifies, it will not execute this memo. That's what the use memo is. So let me reiterate whatever we did from the beginning of the video. So use memo is nothing but hook method. That hook method provides you a way to increase the performance of your component. Why we need to use memo? Because this hook method memorize everything, and it will not re-execute the method that we provided. That's how it works. Let's take an example of sorting. Whatever the code that I have selected, that's nothing but callback function. This callback function get execute only once, and then it is memorized. Once the value for this function is memorized, it will not going to re-execute unless there is a change in the dependency list value. So here I'm having a data as well as sort by. Both this changes, if any one of the variables get changes, then obviously the callback function get executed. Okay, so that is how the use memo will work. If any one of the dependency doesn't going to change, in that case your result will not get changed. It just provide you with the memorized data. So that is what use memo is all about. We will be to another video in the React.js series. In this video, we are going to discuss about how to set up mock API for our application development. Of course, this video is not actually the part of a React library or something. Here we are going to set up API. Since we are learning about React, it is always mandatory to know how to integrate your backend API into the frontend application. For that, I am not going to develop any backend, so I am using free source, which is mockapi.io. Once you visit this website, create one account. The account is free. For the free account, you can create one project. So let's go ahead and do that. This is how your screen should look like at the time once you log into that website. Click on this plus. That will eventually let you create new project. So let's create the project. I just call it as API because it's API, right? So just call it as API and click on create. The project is created. Keep in mind only one project is free. Apart from that, you have to pay. I think one project is enough. So let me click on that project. Here is the endpoint. Now I need to create the resources. So click on resource. I call this one as v1 and this is the default field. This ID field is created and maintained by mock API itself. We don't have to do anything. Even for the value, by default they come up with created at name and then avatar. If you don't want anything, you can just remove. That's it. If you want any field, you can click on this add field, type the name, let's say example name. If you wanted to generate that name field value based on any of this detail, you can select anything. They will be using faker.js to create those kind of data. Let's say example, I wanted to generate name. So they are asking what kind of name you want. So you can select anything. So name.full name. if I select, the data for this field is automatically generated. If you don't want anything, you can just select this to string, number, array, or whatever the type that you're expecting. I'm expecting it to be string, so let it be the string, and that's it, nothing apart from that, because I'm going to do one very small example with the API request. So I think this should be fine for starting up with the API integration. So that's it from my side for setting up the project. Now I can click on create. Before clicking on create, we just have to know what are all the endpoint that it supports. It supports get, post, put, delete, and then get by ID. So it almost support everything, so we can use it, shouldn't be a problem. Let me click on create. This will create the resources, but it doesn't have any data. You can see I'm having 0 here, which means that the resource doesn't have any data. If I click on data button, you can see it is empty as we expected. Now what I do is, let's try to create some 25 record. If you can see, if I mouse over, you can see some number. So 25, let me click on 25. You got see that the data is generated in the bottom. Now if I click on data, you could see the data has been generated automatically. This is how Mark API website work. Now this clearly tells that I can able to send dummy request to this Mark API. Of course, whatever the data that you are sending, that will by default persist into the database. Maximum you can add up to 100 record, not more than that. I think this should be fine. What we can do is, in the next video, we are going to set up the React project so that I can send request from React application to this Mark API, and then let's do how you can send the data. I'll be preparing one endpoint, let's say example post for a video, edit for a video, and something like that, so it become easy for you guys to understand and proceed further with the development. Now that's all for this video. That's it. We will learn more in the next video. Till then, bye, take care.
Series. In this video, we are going to discuss about how to send post request to the Mark API resource that we generated in the last video. To get a data, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create one simple form, nothing much, just to the name field. Here, welcome to post API is there, right? The application is created and it is actually running. So let me create one simple form. It's not a form, just the thing, right? So form, no need of action and those stuff. So here I'll be having a simple text box. ID to something called name, and then I will be having a button. I call it as register. That's it. I register it as register. That's it. Okay, this is just the default setup for the font. Okay, so what am I going to is, here what I do is, I will add one more on submit event, and I will have a handle submit function. I will create this function here so that it can handle the function without any issue. So let's have this handler. I will get the handler event here, and at the time the form gets submit, I just wanted to prevent the default functionality. So let's have a default, prevent default. This will not let the form to refresh at the time when you click on that button. Now you can see that I get enter some data, and clicking on register, the form is not refreshed. Now I have the basic setup for this button data to persist. What am I going to do is, I'm going to create a use state. As we all know that the use state we have already discussed a lot. Now let's have a use state, and that default value for the text box is empty. This use state, if you are not aware what the use state is, I have already uploaded a video related to use state. Please go ahead and watch that. I would highly recommend you guys to do that. I have a field called name, and then a function called set name. Using this set name function only, I can able to update the name field. Okay, next thing, this is done, and what I do is, here let's have the value attribute that points to the name. Now I will be having one more on change event here. Let's say example on change. This function, what am I going to do is, I'm going to update set name e dot target dot value. So now the form,
whatever the data that I print in that or type in the text box, it will automatically get updated in the name state variable. Okay, that's all. As of now, what I do when I click on that button, I just print the state of that form. That's it. Very simple implementation. This is done. I will open the console screen. Here is the console. We don't need to just remove this, shouldn't be a problem. Now let's enter Gopi and then clicking on a register button, you can see that my name is printed in the console screen as we expected. Now what I do is I'm going to send this data to the mock API what we created already. So to achieve that, instead of printing, I'm going to use the fetch method that by default comes in the application. Comes in the browser API. So fetch, I'm going to send the request. Where am I going to send the request? I'm going to send the request through the mock API. So let's get onto the website mock API. This is the resource we created in the last video. Here you can see I almost have 25 data. I don't want any data. Let me make it to 0. No data so far. Next, what I do is I wanted to know what is the post endpoint. So let's click on edit button. If you scroll down, you can see this is the post after v1. So v1 supposed to be added after this base. So let me copy this as it is. / copy. Get back to the React app. Getting to the source code now. Paste and then v1 because that's the data. Now what I do is I wanted to send some data because it's a post. Obviously I have to add some data in the body. Here what I do is I wanted to add the body data. What data you are going to add it in the body? That's nothing but stringify of object name. That's it as of now. If you get into mock API, you can see that the field, whatever the field that I'm having, let's say example, where is that edit? You can see the field is capital NAME. So let's change the code accordingly. Name name. This is nothing but the name variable, state variable, as you can see it here. I'm just using. What is the purpose of converting this to string? Because we know that this JSON.string actually convert this object into a string and then it attach into the request body. That is what this is all about. Next one, apart from this, I wanted to add some header. The reason for adding the header explicitly is whenever you add any body content, which means that the body content type supposed to be registered under content type. Make sure you type it properly, else you will be getting an error. Sometimes you will getting an error and rarely you are getting an error, and many times you won't get error. Instead the data will not insert into the DB properly. You will get some kind of problem. So you will not able to figure out why that it doesn't work. So that kind of problem may arise. That is the reason we are explicitly adding content type. What is the type of data I'm sending? That is application/JSON. This is done. Let's see whether this one is working fine or not. Of course, we will get some response. What I do is then you can write then and catch, or else you can put await, okay, something like that. That way also it should work. Shouldn't be a problem at all in any cases. That's it. And in the then I'm just going to print success. Log success. For this video, I'm just stopping here itself. Here, let me clear the terminal. Let me clear the screen. Everywhere, I'm just clearing it out now. Clicking on register button. You can see that I'm getting error stating failed to fetch on window. Request with get head method have body. What here they are expecting is I'm sending a fetch request. That fetch request got failed because the request body has some data, but I haven't mentioned what method it is. I have to explicitly mention that it is a post method. post method will have a request body, but if you haven't mentioned any HTTP method, this is the HTTP method. Okay, if you haven't attached, or if you haven't mentioned what HTTP method it is, it by default consider that as a get method. That is the reason I'm explicitly mentioning it here, and that's the reason I'm getting error here. Now it is mentioned, so let's clear. I'm clicking on register. Now you can see I didn't get any error stating it is a success as we expected. Let's get back to the network tab and see this is the request that we sent. The payload is my name, and what is the response? The response is also my name. Why I'm getting a response? Because the response is just the by default coming from the Mark API. As per the REST standard, it is always a good practice to send the record which is recently added. So that is the reason they have added it here. So we are getting the response. This is how you have to send post request from our React application. Of course, I haven't handled the response. We have a get endpoint method. In that case, we will come to know how you can handle the get endpoint. I hope this is clear.